Thanks everybody for being here. Apologize for taking some time to show up today. We will get started. Okay. So the minutes from November are were attached to the email yesterday that went out the other day with the agenda. Please take a second to take a look at that. And I would love to entertain a motion to approve the prior minutes, the updated.
Motion,
All right.
Wenner.
Thank you. All right. Let's see here. That's my place. All right. There we go. Okay, so I will just kind of skip to my part right in the beginning. I do not have anything for the chairman's report. We did have our abbreviated meeting not long ago to discuss the PD dose study. If anybody has any questions about that, I see Dr. Clemency is here. I'm sure he'd like to talk to you and answer any questions that you have. And since I have no report, we'll kind of move on. I don't know, Dr. Walters or Dr. Bart, if there's anything coming from CMAC or SEMSCO.
Come on, buddy.
Or Dr. Lynch.
Sorry, Dr. O'Brien, I'm just trying to connect after I was had trouble getting on for a second. There were a couple of things I'll go through quick at the CMAC. There wasn't a whole lot. There was a lot of discussion about the viral pandemic protocol, which we know we kind of had before. We had a REMAC version and there's a state version. If you remember, the state then had kind of tweaked some of the temperature requirements and some of the things that made it not really as useful to us in trying to stop the surge influx of patients that didn't need to go to the emergency room. So there was a lot of discussion about this, a lot of back and forth.
He has all his documents and everything is in. Is he still
Sorry, I'm getting a little
leave?
echo
Is there a
here.
reason for him to leave?
There was like, it had to do with, partially to do with he didn't want to work for Team Health. And he doesn't want, he's working now. He doesn't want to pick up per diem. So
Can
he
you
just
guys hear
wanted
me
to take
okay
a
or
leave.
no?
If he doesn't need to take a leave.
Mike, you can mute him yourself, Mike.
For him to
Yeah, let me do that.
present.
No.
All right, cool. Thanks, Josh. Sorry, everybody, please go ahead.
All right, you guys can hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. So anyways, long story short, after it almost didn't get passed, the CMAC and the SEMSCO did approve a viral pandemic protocol. I think it kind of accomplished the intent of what we from this region had initially wanted it to look like, and including, the ability to actually, if somebody goes through, doesn't have any high risk criteria, you follow the algorithm and they can be left at home without requiring a medical control phone call. So that did get approved. However, as you know, all these things need to go to the commissioner then for final approval before they can be enacted. Dr. Raybridge at the SEMSCO did ask Director Greenberg to fast track this, and including, supposedly in the future, new protocols are going to be, a streamlined approach so that we're not waiting years for them to get approved by the commissioner like in the past. He kind of had brought up to them that this needs to be even fast tracked beyond that and implemented in the next couple of weeks. Of course, that was 2 weeks ago and we still haven't seen anything come out. So hopefully that will come out soon. So stay tuned for that. There was a lot of discussion also on what is a policy from the REMAC versus a protocol. And Dr. Farney could probably chime in here because it centered around some discussions from the Milrems region. One of the issues being they did a very kind of good flowchart algorithm, including geriatric telehealth, trying to prevent these high-risk people from going to the emergency room. And the Department of Legal Affairs from the Department of Health stepped in and said, oh, no, that's a protocol. It needs to be approved by CMAC. The CMAC said this is not a protocol. There's no medicine in here. This is basically a flowchart, inclusion-exclusion criteria. Didn't think it needed CMAC approval. However, it was endorsed so that they could use it. And the good thing that came out of this discussion is that there was kind of some unanimous support of wanting to codify what is or what isn't a protocol, what is handled by the REMAC versus what needs CMAC approval in the future. So that was addressed or will be addressed in the future. There's an opioid protocol that was approved for agencies, basically initiating for opioid withdrawal, initiating buprenorphine in the field. That is something that is obviously limited to agencies that want to do that and have some close kind of follow-up, such as with the Matters program here locally. So it's not something that needs to be done, but it is an option. So this is basically to kind of open the door for some of these things and some of the successes that we're seeing out of some of the other cities across the country who've already adopted some things like that. There was a scope of practice draft that was presented. This is probably the first time I think that New York State has actually had a defined scope of practice. There's always been some discussion, and the Bureau always felt that the scope of practice was what was in protocol versus actually a written scope of practice, and we all know that these are different. This was a point of discussion that'll come up in the future, and it seemed to center around, the reason this kind of came about was utilizing EMS providers in, quote, non-traditional roles, such as community paramedicine in hospitals, and it didn't really address, really the scope of practice is not defined by what environment you're working in. It really is the scope of practice for your level, and then you're credentialed at that, in that different working environment by whatever entity that happens to be. So this is something that was kind of presented initially in a draft form and will be discussed in the future as well. And the last thing I think that I have is that there was a revision of the MOLF policy that was presented for discussion, including some case law in New York State in the past. There have been some issues even in our region about some discussions with adult living centers and people with dementia and MOLF not being honored by the facility. And so this was also presented as kind of some food for thought and tabled until the April meeting. Those were some of the big things, unless anybody else who was there has any specific items that I'm missing.
Rather, New York State trained level period.
Yep.
So I think Brian brought up the salient points, and he mentioned it, but I just want to speak further on. I think the really most important long-term part of the meeting was the discussion about the Monroe Livingston policies relative to some of this innovation. And while we still don't have kind of codified guidance, I think the CMAC was very clear that they're looking to the regions to innovate and set policies which do not require changes to protocol on their own. And we've talked about some of these things. There's some programs have been launched sort of in earnest locally in our region in the meantime. But I think based on the CMAC meeting, it would make sense for us to form a committee to create a policy relative to these things. Perhaps for the next, have that in place, we could hopefully vote on at the next meeting.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you, Brian? Do you think that would be good?
I'm sorry, so you're saying that we have a REMAC policy as to what is a protocol versus what is a
No, I'm sorry. No, based on the discussion at the CMAC, I think we should create a policy governing kind of our view of some of these alternate destination pieces and some of the telemeds and things like that we're doing. We have a handful of them, and I think we've talked about the spirit of the REMAC at a number of different meetings. But I think given the tenor of the CMAC discussion, I think us having kind of a singular policy of our approach to these in our region, I think would be helpful. And I think putting together a committee to have a work product that hopefully could be voted on at the March meeting, I think would be the next step in the progression of this for our region.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think I'm sorry, I misunderstood before. The alternate destination, I think, is something that we can do, that's already been existing, that we can approve and approve facilities and things, and they can actually add into the whatever state repository of destination facilities and things like that. The telehealth, I'm not sure how much we want to go into there, because there was discussion about the state developing a telehealth policy too. So I don't know how much we want to do until we see what that looks like. Although we could kind of as a separate, maybe I wouldn't roll them in together, but maybe come up with what we think that should look like, or some ideas that we could then try to work with the state to funnel into and steer that state discussion of telehealth, and make sure that state policy will eventually meet our needs, if that makes sense, Brian.
Yeah, I think these are I agree. I think these are the issues that hopefully this committee would work on ahead of the next meeting and then bring something back. Daryl, I'm sorry, did you have something to add?
Yeah, and then shocking, I have something to say about the telehealth EMS stuff. But anyways, with it too, we just got some news about some of the ET3 things that are coming out. Looks like it's going to be on hold again for at least another 6 months. So we're just gonna have to make sure as time goes on, we leave some flexibility to stay with that ET3 if they do roll that out. So our policy sort of jive with the national aspects of it. But from the last that we just had a meeting a little while ago, the last I was hearing, it looks like it's going to be at least another 6 months, and they've been doing the 6-month push over and over again until all the COVID gets figured out. I don't foresee any ET3 rollout. So to Dr. Clemency's point, it looks like it'd be a good idea for us to have something that at least gives some guidance.
I don't mean to speak out against Dr. Clemency's idea, but I think that including telehealth in our kind of broad policy about our own operations, we probably should just include that. I mean, let's be honest. Like plug your ears, Ed Major. When is the state? I mean, realistically, how long is it going to take the state to come up with a telemedicine policy? I think we should try to solidify the stuff that we're doing now, get it in a policy form so that it protects us in the future.
And even if we have to leave it a little bit vague in the beginning, just so that way we can have a little, but I think definitely including something, like Josh said, is going to give us a little bit of, at least guidance going forward, because a lot of the alternate levels of destination are going to be built off of some telehealth interventions.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And so I think probably the task should be the committee to be look at both these issues. And then the committee, I think, should also figure out, is this best to bring forth to the REMAC as a single unified policy or as two policies? And I think that would be part of the work group discussion that the group then brings back to the committee. But I think definitely handling both these topics, at least at this early stage, is important.
So I think it would be wise to create a committee subcommittee, I guess, for this. Which of you fine gentlemen, or anyone else, any other members on the call, anyone want to volunteer to chair that committee?
I volunteered, Josh.
I politely decline.
No, I'd be happy to do it if Josh declines.
All right. Cool. Then anybody who's interested in participating in the ad hoc committee to discuss telemedicine policy at the REMAC level and/or alternate destinations, please reach out to Dr. Clemency. I'm sure he'd be interested in your input and your assistance. And then we'll hopefully hear something from that subcommittee at the March meeting.
And if you don't work with me a lot, what Mike really means is email Karen.
There you go. All right. Thank you, everybody. There's no trauma advisory committee report today, which brings us to program agencies, and we will start with Lake Plains.
Hello. My report's always short and sweet. That's what I like. We've been teaching some classes when they're requested. We do the CPR, Narcan, and FB check and inject so we can keep people online and bring more people up to date and refreshed with those. Any email we get that has any kind of educational program attached to it, we send out. I don't list them because it's redundant because other people do. I only have a couple medical director changes. Youngstown Fire Department went from Dr. Brown to Dr. Klementowski, and Barker Fire Department has changed from Dr. Franco to Dr. Borton. Other than that, it was a pretty quiet couple months with everything that was going on. The biggest thing we've been working on is the EPCR. All my agencies are supposedly online with EPCRs at this point in time. We have a couple kinks with them, and Rob's working with me on those, but they've all chosen and gone that way. Still working with the BLSFRs to register a vehicle with the state. The nice thing is it's been extended to have it done till July 1st, which is nice. The Western New York area had the pilot program type thing, trying it out first, which gave our people a head start, which was nice. And the only ones that really have to do are the ones in the CME program. I'm trying to get them all to do it, but we'll see what happens. And that's pretty much all I really have.
Are you gonna leave it up? So
All right. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Brings us now to STEMS.
Hi, this is Alicia. My report was submitted. You can take a look at that. But in addition, and just a few things to highlight, the EMSC survey has been sent out to all the EMS agencies in the state. We would like, to urge all agencies to complete this survey so the state can get some good data on pediatric care in the state. If you don't know the link, it is in my report. We were able to work with St. Bonaventure University's physician assistant program last week and help them with doing BLS provider, ACLS, and PALS, which was great to have some healthcare providers here in our building getting the training that they needed. And lastly, the state has been sending out the active diversion notifications. These come via email through a listserv. The state is allowing individuals to sign up to join this listserv. So if you don't have that information how to get that, we can provide that to you. However, they do send a lot of emails. So as a way of kind of compiling all the diversions into one spot on our website, we do have a page that is updated automatically as they are sent out, which do have all the current diversion notices. And I'll put the link to that in the chat, just if anyone ever wants to look up to see what hospitals are currently on diversion. It does update as those emails are sent. That's the end of my report.
Thanks, Alicia. UBMD, Rob.
Good afternoon. So again, like everyone else, I submitted my report that you can review. Just to touch on some highlights. As far as the EPCR transition goes, we only have 2 agencies that are still working on transition. They have communicated with the state in order to maintain their CME program, and we continue to monitor and give follow-ups on them. Still have a couple of agencies remaining in the area that have not completed their BLSFR vehicle registration for this program as well. The good news is that the state has extended the deadline to July 1st, but I'd like to get that done as soon as we can. So I will be continuing to reach out to those 5 agencies. Vital Signs Conference was a good conference. Next year is going to be in Albany, the 26th through the 30th. Although I suspect that's going to adjust a little bit because that can either they're going to a 5-day conference or that was an error. And lastly, there's been a bunch of new policies that have been put up online so far this year. There were some new education policies towards the end of the year, as well as some 3 new policies that are now on the website for this year. And then lastly, we continue to support the CARES initiative out of this office by trying to bring agencies on board to participate in the CARES registry. If anybody's interested, feel free to reach out and I'll put you in contact. That's about all I have.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to our subcommittee reports. We'll go anybody, let's see, Dr. Walters, I don't see Dr. Bart, but anything for collaborative protocols? I'm not aware of anything.
No, there is not. We're still waiting for the protocols that were approved last year to be approved by the commissioner. So, but nothing else regarding that.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. QI, Dr. Tanaka, Dr. Borton.
No updates from the QI committee.
Very good. Thank you. Oh, Christ. All right. Well, we have an infiltrator here. Stand by. Okay. Remove somebody else. All right. Bylaws subcommittee. I don't see Dr. Bart, but if you're on here. All right. I'm not aware of a report. We'll check back in March. That brings us to old business, and the bylaws review is actually part of that bylaws subcommittee. So we will wait to hear from them when they are able to join us, hopefully in March. Excuse me. That brings any other old business before I move on to new business? All right. So that brings us to new business. We have a very short list today. We just have the 2 medical director changes, Youngstown from Dr. Brown to Dr. Klementowski, and Barker from Dr. Franco to Dr. Borton, and then 1 pad notification for Buffalo State College. There's nothing else pending here in front of us. So if there is a motion to approve these en masse.
This is Mark Kenyon. I motion.
Thanks, Mark. Is there a
Warner,
second?
second.
Great, Daryl. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, very good. Those that motion carries and those changes are approved. One last ask, any other new business in front of the REMAC before we adjourn? Okay, thanks again for being here. Again, sorry I kept you a little bit late by not being here on time. If you're interested in participating in the telemedicine / alternate destination subcommittee / task force, please email or call Dr. Clemency, which means please kindly email or nicely call Karen. We'll get you involved. And otherwise, we will see you in March. Please have a safe time until then. Stay warm and take care. Reach out if there's anything in the meantime I can help with. Thank you, everybody. I will take a motion to adjourn. Dr. Clemency, Dr. Warner, done. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Have a good one, everybody.